This is Gemara Sanhedrin Daf Gimel, exciting as we're still on the beginning of the journey. And the same tefillah that we began with yesterday, that the same vigor and excitement that always accompanies the beginning of Masechtas should continue. B'siyat d'shmaya, and we should allow that excitement to push us, to chazer, to push us to have more clarity. B'siyata d'shmaya. So we're holding on Gimel Amid Aleph. We are 5 lines down, and we just finished discussing the opinion of Rav Avuha. The Rav Avuha taught us that when we speak about Shloisha Dayanim, 3 Dayanim that are there for certain cases, as the whole beginning of our Mishnah spoke about, there's 2 types of Shloisha Dayanim. There's Shloisha Dayanim Mumchiyim, 3 Dayanim who are, we'll call them experts literally, and then there's, or more precise will be that they have smicha, they're ordained, and then there's going to be Shloisha Dayanim that are Hedyotais, 3 laymen that are there helping judge the case. So Rav Avuha was the one that made this critical distinction, that when we say that loans, halvayos in the Mishnah require Shloisha Dayanim, what that means is Hedyotais. Based off of that answer comes along the Gemara, and the Gemara asks, I hachi, on the 5th line, Tarti Katani. Says the Gemara, Rav Avuha should have said that the Mishnah is talking about 2 different cases. Number 1, Dine Mamanis Vishlesh Hedyotais. Number 2, Dine Mamanis Hedyotais Gzir Chavolos Vishlesh Mumchen. Those are the 2 different cases. One more time. Number 1, and meaning, if Rav Avuha's chiluk, his chiddush, that dine mamanis, halvayos, suffices with hedyotais, with non-ordained judges, non-talmidei chachamim that receive smicha, the Mishnah could have been mechalek, could have differentiated between the Dine Mamanis and the Gzil Zachavalis in such a scenario. Va'id, and now that's question number 1 in the Mishnah. Va'id, question number 2 in the Mishnah asks the Gemara, Shleisha, Lamali, why did the Mishnah say 3 like this, 3 like this? Why did the Mishnah say Dine Mamanis b'Shleisha? Gzil Zachavalis b'Shleisha, what should have said? Dine Mamanis, which probably, as we read the Mishnah time number 1, many people might have actually had this kasha. Whether you verbalized it or not, it was probably something that was at some level bothering you in the back of your brain, that the Mishnah is very verbose, seemingly is repetitive, and that's the Gemara's kasha. And therefore says the Gemara, Rav Avuha, you're incorrect. Ella Amar Rava. And of course, anytime we see an Ella, what does Ella mean? That means that it's a new pshat. Wipe away that which we said, a new pshat. Tarti Katani. Says Rava, yes, the Mishnah is indeed teaching 2 different cases. Mishum de Rav Chanina. Similar to that which Rav Chanina said. What did Rav Chanina say? That there are those that there are deraisa. There are midaraisa obligations and requirements in which you need certain things, and then there are derabanan dirka cases. Says the Gemara, that's how Rava answers the kasha, like Rav Chanina answered it yesterday. Rav Acha b'rei Rav Ikamar midaraisa chanami kosher. Midaraisa, even 1 dayan is enough. Shenemar, as the Torah teaches us, b'sedek tishbon hamisecha. With justice, b'tzedek, with sitkus, you should judge your fellow. Singular, tishboit, b'tzedek, 1 dayan midaraisa. So why in the world do we see in our Mishnah that you need shloisha? Elamisham yoshvik yiranois. But because that we're worried that the 1 judge is going to be perhaps not fit, the 1 judge might not be proficient, might not be the appropriate person to be the dayan. So to counteract that, to ensure that even if one of the judges isn't absolutely fit, there's checks and balances, we'll have multiple dayanim. That's why you need 3, which of course is a fascinating, absolutely fascinating detail. The Gemara is suggesting us that it could have been such So therefore, we take care of all scenarios and we say, okay, make sure you have 3 dayanim. Says the Gemara, smack in the middle of the Amid, Atu is the first word. Atu bitlasa milahavi yoshei karanais. Says the Gemara, what do you mean? Even if you have 3 people, maybe there'll be 3 yoshei karanais. 3 people that don't know the halachas. What do you accomplish by having 3? Meaning, if you require certain baseline obligations, you need to be a mumcha, you need to have smicha, you need to know something, okay? But if that's not, it's just a number game, so maybe you're going to weiter, you're going to further have the same issue. Answers the Gemara, it's impossible. The last uchad the Gomer. It's impossible that out of 3 people, says the Gemara, 1 for sure is going to know what's going on. It says the Gemara further, 1 second, yashalmu. Says the Gemara, 1 second. If we're going to say that even midaraisa, Hadiyaitais, regular people that be dayanim, says the Gemara, so if they made a mistake, why are they obligated to pay? They, just like we know that midrabanan, on the lower level, you wouldn't be obligated. So why here are these people obligated? If you tell me they have to be a mumcha, they need smicha, okay, I can understand. You make a mistake, you got to pay for it. But if we're talking about the fact that midoraisa, anyone could be the dayan, if they make a mistake, why do they have to pay? Answers the Gemara, kol shkein denafisha yoshei karanais. Says the Gemara, maybe you're right. But if they're going to be patur from paying, you know what's going to happen? Anyone is just going to jump up and be a dayan. And we don't want that. Says the Gemara, okay, so based on what we just said, and this really wraps up yesterday's shir, which leaves a beautiful place for chazara that anyone who's looking for one, the first blot and a half. Ma'ika bein Rava l'Ravacha b'Rid Ravika. Tachlis, we had 2 terutzim. We had the teretz of Rava, the Rava one with Rav Chanina, and we had the teretz of Ravacha b'Rid Ravika. Says the Gemara, what's the difference? Ika bein Nayu Damar Shmuel, Shnayim Shadanu Dineim Din, Shenikru Badin Chatzuf. The din of Shmuel that if 2 people judge a case which is completely inappropriate, they should not have done such. They're called a bezdin chatzaf, a bezdin with chutzpah, but it works. So the Rava lastly the Shmuel. According to Rava, the din of shloisha, the din of 3 dayanim is a din midaraisa. So he argues on Shmuel. Shmuel says 2 people can be a judge. It's just called chutzpah. Rava says absolutely not. Midaraisa, you need 3. According to the second teretz, it's true. According to Ravika, how many dayanim are needed midaraisa? 1. So certainly 2 would work on the Bikol the Bezdin Chatzaf. Says the Gemara, that's going to be the difference between Rava, Rav Ravdika, whether they conform that 2 dayanim could indeed judge a case or not. We continue 8 lines from the bottom. The 2 das nezik v'chati nezik v'chulu. Says the Mishnah, cases of full damage and half damages are as well judged by 3 dayanim. Asks the Gemara, nezik anu chavolis. The Mishnah said chavolis, bodily injury. Isn't that nezik? Answers the Gemara, Mishum the Kawai lemiste chatzi nezik tani nami nezik shalom. You're right, but I wanted to say chatzi, so it's a nezik shalom. But it's true nezik shalom. It's true that nezik is really chavolis. Asks the Gemara, wait, chatzi nezik nami anu chavolis. Chatzi nezik is the same thing. Answers the Gemara, you're right. Tana memayna, tana kenasa. We said chavalais because that's mamain, and then it said kenas, which is the cases of chatzi nezik. Asks the Gemara, ha nichalamanda amar. And as we glance at the top, this brings us back to the beginning of Baba Kama. What is the payment of damages? So it's good according to Mandam says Paul Keniska Kenasa, like we just explained. That Chatzi Nezik is Kenas, so the Mishnah lists Chatzi Nezik and Chavalais. But of course, if you remember that's a machlaikas Manda Amar Paul Keniska Memayna, that no, paying half damages is the requirement, is not a Kenas Ma'ikala Meimar. Answers the meaning, so why does it say Chatzi Nezik and Chavalais? Answers the Gemara, Elaidi the Kabbai Lemiste Tashlume Kevel, Vitashlume Dalad Vehei, Dimamoin, Sheinoi Mishtaleim Beroish. Because it wanted to list those cases there as we turn over to Gimel Amid Beis. Sheinoi Mishtaleim Beroishu. Taninami Chatzi Nezik, Dimamoin, Sheinoi Mishtaleim Beroishu, which is also the same. And v'aidi dekabai. 1 second, let's just uncover Rashi over here. V'aidi dekabai lemisti chatzi nezek tani nami nezek. So we have one case piggybacking on the next case. Let's look at the top Rashi that explains to us what is she'ena mishalim b'roish, she'mishalim yoiser min hakeren, chatzi nezek mishalim pachas min hakeren. What does it mean mishalim b'roish? It means paying the primary value of the item, whether it's greater, whether it's smaller, that the payment does not necessarily have to do with what the Karen is. So too, we list the case of Mamai Chatzi Nezek, and once we list that, we list all the cases. So one piggybacks onto the next. Says the Gemara, Shloisha min Allah, and a fundamental shaila. The whole name of the parak is what? Dinei Ma'aman is Bishloisha. So now, says the Gemara, we get to Gimlum and Beis. And the Gemara now says, wait, we didn't get the source. Where do we know that you need 3 dayanim? The Tanarabanan, Vinikra Balabayis Elha Elohim. That the Balabayis should come to Elohim means a judge. That's Ari Kanecha, that's one. Ado Elohim. Yaved Var Shneim. Should come before the judge, Ari Kan Shnayim. Asher Yashin Elohim, Ari Kan Shleisha Divi Rabbi Ishia. So Rabbi Ishia learns from the 3 psukim, we learn that you need 3 dayanim. Rav Yonasan Amar Rishain. Says Rabbi Yonasan, Rishain Tchila Namar. The first time it says judge is the beginning of the story. It's the introduction. It's telling us what we're talking about. Ve'ein darshin tchilos. We don't darshin the beginnings because you have to give this context. You have to know what's going on in the Torah. As the 3rd line in Rashi says, Leminyan legufei asa. Teaching us the story. Dilabayim mumchim dalehim lashain gidoyla v'rabanas. The Torah says the first time in Ikra Balais Elho Elohim, you come to the judge to teach us that he's a judge, that he's a mumchin. We can't learn a number from there, says Rabbi Yonasan. Elo, so rather Rabbi Yonasan says Ad Elohim Yavai Devar Shnei Marikan Echa. That's one. Asher Yashin Elohim Marikan Shnei. And Rabbi Yonasan says, but you can't have 2 dayanim because then they could have split. And you can't have an equal bezin, so you have to add on one more. Harei kan shleisha. So you have a machlekes between Rabbi Yonasan and Rabbi Yeshia, whether 3 psukim teach us 3 dayanim, or whether really 2 psukim teach us 2 dayanim. You can't have a split, and therefore you add on, and therefore you add on the 3rd dayan. So says the Gemara, wait. If this is indeed the machlekes, everyone can anticipate what's about to happen. Asks the Gemara, Nema, why don't we suggest B'darshat Tchilus Kamifliki? That the machlekes, Rav Yonasan and Rav Yeshia is what? Whether we darshan the first pasuk in general. Demar Sava Rav Yeshia Darshat Tchilus, Mar Sava Rav Yonasan, they Darshat Tchilus. Answers the Gemara, Loi, that's not the machlekes. The Kuli Amain Darshat Tchilus. Amlecha Rav Yeshia, so what's Rav Yeshia going to say? He did Darshat Tchilus. He says, if you just was teaching us context, the pasuk should have said the balabais comes to the judge. Why is the wordage, as we saw in Rashi, that the word Elohim ikanot kedayla v'rabanos? So explains Rabbi Yeshia, my Elha Elohim shmamina. The word it teaches us liminyana. It's come to teach us that you need a 3rd judge, but we don't darshat chilos. No, that's just a word that is used. As people talk, one who has a judge, a case has to be judged, and go to the dayan. So that is the machlekes Rav Yonasan versus Rav Yeshia. Asks the Gemara of Rav Yeshia, lastly, Bezdin Naita. Does Rav Yeshia really not require an uneven Bezdin? It sounds like, according to Rav Yeshia, just because you had 3 psukim. If you didn't, it would sound like it's no problem having an equal bezin. What's the problem? Why does the pasuk say teaches the brayso lintais to decide? Achar rabim goes to combine the majority latais to decide. Says the brayso, make a bezdin that could decide, meaning bezdin has to be uneven. So what does Rav Yeshia do with this brayso? Answers the Gemara, several like Rav Yehuda Damar Shivim. He was like Rav Yehuda that if you remember we learned in the Mishnah, Rav Yehuda, believe it or not, told you could have a bezdin of 70. Tetanan Sanhedrin Yagidai Leisa Shal Shivim Ve'achad Tanikama. Rav Yehuda Imer Shivim. So that's how Rav Yeshia holds. Says Gemara, whoa. When did Rav Yehuda say he could have an equal Bezdin? That's only b'Sanhedrin Gedolah d'chsivi kra, because we have psukim that point that way. But b'sharbei dinam mishamaslei, do you have any indication that Rav Yehuda would hold another Birtei Dinam? It could be equal number of Dayanim. Says Gemara, maybe you're going to tell me Loishna, there's no difference, but you can't. But now, says the Braisa, with regarding to smicha, the leaning of the zakenim on the parachatas of the tzibur, and with regard to the glarufa, you need 3. Rav Yehuda, Rav Chamish, you need 5. I mean, in my time, Rav Yehuda, what? Rav Yehuda require 5. V'samchu shnayim, ziknei shnayim, v'in bezdin shakel. Says the Mishnah, klar, Rav Yehuda holds in bezdin shakel, must even lay by the echad, rikan hey. So says the Gemara, so Rav Yehuda also holds of ein bezdin shakel. So why does Rav Aishia seemingly only hold you need 3? Because of the 3 psukim. Explains the Gemara, Rav Aishia adifa mid Rav Yehuda. Rav Aishia holds even more than Rav Yehuda. We're at 10 lines from the wide lines. Deil Rav Yehuda b'sanhedrin gedolu d'leslei. Ho b'sharbei dina islei. Rav Yehuda holds by Sanhedrin gedolu can be equal, but nowhere else. Rav Yoshe b'sharbei dina nami leslei. Rav Yoshe indeed holds that even by other Birtei Dinim, it's no problem, it could be equal. But what's the Aviyas Kasha? 6 lines from the wide lines. What does he do with the Braisa that says he can't be equal? Answers the Gemara, Mukim lei b'dina nefashos. However, Aval b'dina imamonis, Rav Yoshe holds lie, it's allowed to be an equal bezdin. Hello, Haditanan. One last kasha. We learned in the Mishnah, Shtayim Yoimrim Zakai, Vechon Amr Chayiv. Zakai, the Lachasi Zakai. Shtayim Amr Chayiv, Vechon Amr Zakai Chayiv. Neima Delik Rav Aishia. It's an explicit Mishnah that seems to teach us it's 3. So is that not like Rav Aishia? Answers the Gemara, Filatim Rav Aishia. Maisi Love Kavah Chamr Din Nefashis. But Din Nefashis, the Chamir Yam Rachmanis Lo Basaru, but Din Imaminus Lo Kol Shekein. So says the Gemara, Rav Aishia is going to learn from Dinei Mamanis, that when we learn that this din of Raiv, that can be learned from Dinei Mamanis, but indeed it could be that Rav Yeshua would indeed hold his own, that you could theoretically have an ease of bezdin. L'maisa, it's not going to happen because we have 3 psukim teaching us that you need 3 dayanim. We'll pick it up from here, B'siyata Dishmaya.